bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go!
EAGLES, Eagles.
It is a football Monday here on Birds 365 and April 1st, April Fool's Day Monday on Birds 365. And I got bad news for you folks. This is not an April Fool's joke. Hassan Reddick is no longer an Eagle. This is not Howie Roseman trying to put one over on you and or any kind of prank. The deal actually did come down, as is all too often the case, on a Friday. We always appreciate when the Eagles make news on Friday, when the Birds 365 guys aren't going to be able to jump in and comment on it for days. Thank you very much for that. I don't know if that had anything to do with the timing or not, but it is official now. Hassan Reddick has been traded to the Jets. And Johnny Mack, I got to tell you, I don't get it. I understand that the market is what the market is, and it seems a lot less. And even factoring that in, the trades during this offseason have seemed to cost less than they have in previous years. Wait 3 years for a draft pick? You got to wait 2 more drafts before you actually get a pick where you don't know what the pick is just yet for one of the Eagles' best defensive player last year. I've said here on Birds 365, their most consistent player on defense last year was Fletcher Cox, because the position and what he was asked to do didn't change much when they changed defensive coordinators in season. That, to me, had a major adverse effect on Hassan Reddick, who, like almost the entire defense, wasn't great at the tail end of the season. I'll put that more on Matt Patricia than Hassan Reddick. Their best player over the course of all 17 games on the defense side of the ball was Hassan Reddick, and they traded him for a draft pick that they're not going to see for 3 drafts. That's not a good return.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it in the moment, yeah. And I get that's what, people are prone to do. And I fall into that trap all the time. I mean, it's always about immediacy. What does it do for me right now? What does it do in the moment? And it doesn't look great in the moment. I like Rich Shamini, who covers the Jets for ESPN. I like his description of it from the Jets perspective. In 2024, you'll probably think it's a home run. In 2026, you'll think it's a broken bat single, is what he said. So I kind of turned that on its head. In 2026, it's probably going to look like a home run for the Eagles. Right now, it's like a broken bat single. But guess what? A broken bat single is not bad either. You got somebody on base.
How do both teams have broken bat singles, John? When there's a deal, you try and figure out a winner and a loser. We talk enough about it here that Howie Roseman likes to win his trades. You win this one?
Well, again, what's you're grading it in for 2024 only.
I'm grading it for the entire time. What I think is going to happen, projecting going forward. We don't know what's going to happen in 24.
Well, that's about the evaluation of the Eagles and Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith. That's what that's about. So if they're right about those 2 players, they're going to win this trade.
Probably.
If they're wrong about those 2 players, they're going to lose this trade. It's as simple as that. So it always comes down to evaluation of players. Nolan Smith is a guy, and it's more about Smith. Everybody's focusing on Huff. Huff was going to play, whether Reddick was here or Reddick wasn't here. He was going to play significant reps and significant snaps. The guy who wasn't going to play if Reddick was here was Nolan Smith. He, you know, at that point, you have Reddick, you have Hupp, you have Josh Sweat, you have Brandon Graham. He's fighting for scraps at the back end of the rotation. So that's the player this affects the most. And the Eagles want him. Howie talked about this in Indianapolis. He wanted him on the field more evidently last year. I always go to my Billy Bean descriptions because I love the movie Moneyball. I'll do it again. In the movie, you know, obviously it's Hollywood playing it up. Art Howe, the manager, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, wouldn't play Scott Hatteberg. And the GM, Billy Bean, wanted him to play. So what did he do? He traded Carlos Pena, so he was forced to play him. You know, Nick Sirianni spoke in Indianapolis after Howie Roseman, and Howie said, we need to get these young players on the field. We need to see what they can do. And then Nick said, hey, I'm trying to win the game on Sunday. I'm trying to win the game. The guy who gives me the best opportunity to win the game as the head coach, whether it's a veteran, a young guy, whatever, by hook or by crook, I got to win that particular game. So he's got a different mindset. And by the way, he should have a different mindset. That should be his mindset. Howie's got a different job. So you remove Reddick from the equation, Nolan Smith has to play. If he's right about Nolan Smith, he comes out smelling like a rose. If he's wrong, he comes out looking bad. So that's basically, it comes down to Nolan Smith, even more. It comes down to Huff and Nolan Smith, but even more Nolan Smith than Huff, because Huff was going to play either way. And the Eagles, look, they told you by their actions what they believe of Hassan Reddick. Descending player, about to turn 30. They don't want to be in that 20+ million range because he ain't playing. He wasn't playing here. I realize the Jets haven't gotten a deal done. And, you know, there's going to be a bunch of myopic people saying, well, you could have just made him play for 14.5 years. It wasn't going to happen here. It happens all the time in sports. I don't think it's going to happen there. I think the Jets are going to get something done. But players are willing to go somewhere else more than they're willing to stay in the situation where they've excelled and feel they're being disrespected. It happens all the time in sports. May not make sense, but that's the reality of it. He's not paying for less money, playing for less money than Bryce Huff in Philadelphia, nor should he. So the Eagles would have had to work out something, whether it's a short-term restructure, get him up to 18, 19, 20, you know, if it's as team friendly as possible. And they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to do that. They didn't want to, let's say 18 for the sake of argument, which is probably low, but
right.
An 18 million player, a 17 million player, and a 13 million player, probably in Josh Sweat, because the incentives are pretty easy to get to. That's, you know, that's significant. And when people say, well, you got to put the best players on the roster, again, that's pie in the sky. I mean, you got to build a roster. And I'm with you, Jody. He was the best defensive player they had last year. I'm with you on that. Their defense stunk on ice. They were the 26th.
So if your defense stinks on ice, let's remove the best player?
No.
How is that good?
It's a mosaic. It's a piece. I guarantee, I'm going to, April 1st, this is not an April Fool's joke. I guarantee the 2024 Eagles defense is better than the 2023 Eagles defense because the mosaic's going to be better. Did they make a step back in the individual spot as Hassan Reddick versus Bryce Huff or whoever you want to grade him against? Probably. But the defense as a whole is going to be better. Vic Fangio is going to be better. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's back. They've done some things at linebacker. Hopefully Nakobe Dean stays healthy. I think they're going to do more. I think they're going to do more at corner. But it's similar to Brian Flores. I said last year, I got that one right. One of the few I get right. I said, I don't care. I don't even look at the talent. That team's going to be significantly better on defense, and they're going to be top half. That was my prediction. They ended up 13th with that crappy talent just because of the scheme difference and the defensive coordinator. Is Vic going to be to that level and get it from – he's going to be top half. The Eagles are going to be one of the top 15 or 16 defenses in the NFL next season. That's my prediction. And the mosaic as a whole is going to be better.
All right. Here's the one thing that you left out either on purpose or I'll point it out to you. They're a win now team. They're an all-in team. I get the whole in 2026, it may look like a broken bat singles compared to now it looks like a home run and vice versa when you flip the two. I get that. I understand all of that, and it will be determined by more than just Hassan Reddick because it's who the Eagles are replacing Hassan Reddick with. So, yes, Huff and Nolan Smith are going to be under the microscope. They're a let's get to and win the Super Bowl team now. If they were a team that was coming off an 9-8 season, if it was a team that was in a building mode, that they weren't there yet, if it was a team that hadn't already paid their quarterback $250 million in a contract, I'd get where Howie's coming from. That's not this team. That's not the Philadelphia Eagles. They are in a win now mode. They finished second in their division last year, double-digit wins, the collapse and everything else. We know all the whole story. But the Cowboys are the team that finish ahead of them. They want to make sure the Cowboys aren't the first team in almost 2 decades to win back-to-back division. They want to keep that carousel turning, different winner every single year. And the Cowboys are doing nothing to make me believe that they're all in to win next year. You can't make a move like this for the future. This is a win-now season. 2024 is a win-now season for the Philadelphia Eagles, and you can't remove your best defensive player for a draft pick you're not going to see for 3 years. All of the other analysis aside, that analysis trumps it for me. This is a win-now season for the Eagles, and trading Hassan Reddick for a future draft pick that you're not going to see for 3 years is not a win-now move. That doesn't equate to me.
Well, the future draft picks about, and I say this, and I fall into the same trap. I get very myopic, and people get very myopic. And I said last week, I said, Howie ain't getting he's getting day 3 pick is the best he's going to get. And that was the case. So, Howie's about market inefficiency, and that's the part I left out, and I didn't mean to left out. He's got a different status than Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas doesn't give a shit about 2026, and that's what Rich was talking about, Rich Samini. He can't care about 2026 because if he doesn't win now, he's done. He's out the door. He's not. So it means not. It'll mean something to the next Jets GM. He'll say that, left me without a valuable pick in 2026. But it won't be nothing for Joe Douglas unless he gets that team to be a contender, which they have a chance to be. Let's be honest, if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy and he gets back to what we typically think of as Aaron Rodgers, they got a very good chance, and they have a very good defense. That's only going to get better. So that's the Jets' perspective. The Eagles' perspective, how he can operate different, and I've talked about this how many times, Jody? He can operate different than other GMs. So he said, you're not giving me a second-round pick? You're not giving me at least a conditional second round? Well, how about 2025? Not in 25. How about 2026? He says it all the time. He thinks it's, the notion in the NFL, because of the vast majority of general managers have to act in a certain way. They gotta improve right now. They gotta live in the moment. The core belief is a future, say, second round pick or third round pick is not as valuable as a second or third round pick in April. Howie says, from a common sense standpoint, that makes no sense. That makes no sense. In fact, from his standpoint, he thinks as it is, that's probably post Aaron Rodgers Jets. So whether it's the third round or the second round, because Hassan with that defense, if he stays healthy, is probably going to get to 10 sacks. I'm pretty confident with that. The 67.5 playing time percentage, he hit that here easily. It won't be as easy to hit that with the Jets. And if the Jets are savvy enough, by the way, they might rest them in week 18 if they're going to the playoffs. They might just not play him that much.
Right.
Because they have enough talent.
it's not a bonus thing. Usually those type of numbers are tied to a bonus. They're not screwing the player because unless they get a contract done, they're just screwing the Eagles.
Yeah.
Specifically.
But even if it's a third, so even if you want to default to it's a third round pick, if the Jets if it's the post Aaron Rodgers Jets, it could be top of the third round versus bottom of the third round, top of the second round versus bottom of the second round. So that factors into it as well. But yeah, so if you're going to, anybody who wants to look at it in the moment, doesn't look great. If you look at the whole conceptualize and they don't want him, the bottom line is they don't want him here. Now, are they wrong?
Then here's my bottom line. I think their evaluation of the player is wrong. I do not believe Haason Reddick is a descending player. I will say his sack number came down this year because of his defensive coordinators, not because Haason Reddick, just that extra 12 months on his lifespan caused him to be a less effective player. You're singing the praises here of Vic Fangio. The Eagle defense is guaranteed to be better just because of Vic Fangio. Well, what were they, like 23rd, 24th in the NFL?
I think. Yeah, they were terrible. That's my point.
There's only one direction to go from
here.
And
that's my point.
Well, I'd like to see Haason Reddick in the Vic Fangio defense for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now we're not going to get to see it because they shipped him off for a future draft pick that's not going to be evidence for years.
And that's why I say it's not. Let's wait and see what the defense looks as a whole. Because if you're playing 3 edge rushers, let's say they trade for a cornerback, does it look better? Well, if you pay 18, and again, let's default to 18 million. If you pay 18 million for another edge rusher, can you trade for a cornerback? It ain't over with Howie. It ain't about one thing. It ain't about one thing, and that's it. And you put that in a little box.
But see, and we had a guy who streamed in earlier and said the Eagles saved $14 million by trading him. No, they didn't. They saved $1 million by trading him, because of the way Howie structures the contract. So if they redo the deal and they structure it, they could structure it and probably save more than $1 million that they saved if they're willing to take the hit down the road, which they usually are. So don't sell it on, because they be paying another defensive lineman $14 million. Well, no, they're not. They're taking a dead cap hit. So it's not what his salary would be. It's what his salary would be above and beyond the dead cap cost they took to trade him to the Jets, and that's an extra $1 million or $2 million. That's
but you're assuming they want to. You're assuming they want to extend a guy about to turn 30, and that's where they probably got burnt by James Bradbury a little bit, or they felt they got burnt by James Bradbury a little bit. That probably factors into it, making the poor decision there. And if they misevaluate the players, and again, Haason Reddick on one side, Nolan Smith, Bryce Huff on the other side, then it's terrible. I mean, that's what it, but this is what a GM is supposed to do. Evaluate your players. It's not about paying you for 2022. If it's about paying you for 2022, that's one of the greatest seasons an Eagles defenders ever had. Haason Reddick in the Super Bowl season. 19 and a half sacks, wrecked the NFC Championship game. If you can guarantee me that guy, yeah, I'd say in perpetuity, keep paying him, keep paying him. And the trick is finding, and their belief is their belief. Could it be wrong? Of course it could be wrong. Do they want Nolan Smith on the field? Of course they want Nolan Smith on the field. Why do they want Nolan Smith on the field? You can make that argument. But they believe in the player. If they're wrong, it looks terrible. If they're right, it looks great, because then you've gotten younger, you've gotten more cost effective, and arguably you're going to be, not arguably, you're going to be better on defense, because you have to be better on defense. Right. That's not Hassan's fault, but the mosaic as a whole is going to be better. And it's not just about, and again, I'm going to use it, even though I get in trouble when I use it. Everybody's got a dream team mentality. Oh, you got to have a star. No, you got to fit the pieces together the best way possible to put together a Super Bowl team.
I won't accept that, because dream team mentality was acquiring other players from other team. Haason Reddick was here, and he was a Pro Bowl player 2 years in a row. So it's not he's you got to fit him into the overall picture.
No,
he's
I'm
already
not.
here.
It's not
he's
about
already here, and he's been here 2 years and made the Pro Bowl both years.
It's about the star mentality. I'm not talking about the actual. Everybody has a star. The big name trap, the big name mentality. Guys, this league moves very fast. I talk about it all the time.
Very true.
You are not you are, and I use that word again, in perpetuity. When you make the All-Pro team, that means you had a great season. It does not mean you're making the All-Pro team in perpetuity. They think he's a descending player. If they're wrong, then it's not going to look good.
So we got Jeff Kerr waiting. Let me get John McMullen's opinion here. Do you believe Haason Reddick is a descending player?
And well, last year it clearly was from 2022, but that's difficult. 2022, again, he had one of the great seasons. He wasn't close to what he was in 2022. So was that because of the supporting cast? Was that because of the defensive coordinators? And the other part I didn't bring in is Vic. You know, Vic wants quarter flat defenders who can cover. The Andrew Van Ginkles of the world. That's part of it too. Now, as you know, I'm kind of tortured when it comes to Vic Fangio because I think he's a hell of a coach, and I hate the scheme, as you know. But you know, when you have quarter flat defenders and everybody's losing their mind, when Haason Reddick drops 7 times again in one game, by the way, that's it. The most he dropped in any other game was 4 times. He barely dropped during the season. With Vic, in theory, he's going to drop more, and that's going to drive people insane. And if Vic Fangio says, I need somebody who can do a little bit more in coverage, it is what it is.
All right. And I'm going to try one more time. Does John McMullen, what the Eagles think, do you think that Haason Reddick is a seriously declining player?
Seriously declining? No. Declining.
Well, describe it any way you want. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
He is. He will never reach. And by the way, he probably, even if he wasn't a declining player, he would never again reach what he did in 2022.
That's understanding. Do you think that Bryce Huff will be better than Haason Reddick next year?
In 2022, no. In 2023, maybe. In 2023, he better be better.
2023 is come and gone. We're looking at 24, 25.
No, I'm saying he better be better than the 2023 Haason Reddick.
Oh, comparison to Haason Reddick's 2023. Gotcha.
Yes.
And you think that's happening?
It better happen.
And what are his skills as far as dropping into coverage?
He's a projection as a player. I mean, he's a projection as a player. He was a part-time player with the Jets, and that's the trick of it all. And Nolan Smith, again, factors into this as well. Nolan Smith is probably more of the coverage player, at least in theory, because he's done it, and they played him some at off-ball linebacker. So in theory, and you know, they talked up Zach Bond as well. I don't know how that will factor into it, but you know, that's the coverage aspect that Vic wants. And look, I don't like the scheme, but the guy's a good coach. And if he wants a particular skill set from a particular player from a particular position, you generally give it to him.
All right. And he's scheming in a guy who couldn't get on the field as a rookie and a guy who has done nothing but rush the passer since he's been in the National Football League. And the Jets never drop him in coverage because they just didn't do that. So we're putting a big potential piece of the Eagles defense, the ability for a defensive end to drop into coverage on the back of 2 guys who've never really done it on the NFL level so far.
The NFL,
not a good thought process.
The whole NFL is about projection. It's about what is insert name going to do this season, not last season. Correct. What is he going to do this season?
And you're projecting Haason Reddick to go even further backwards next year, and both of the guys that they're going to have replace him, because you're right, it's going to be both. It's going to be Nolan Smith and Bryce Huff to be elevating their game and going forward rather than going backwards. I don't
that part. Hasan's a descending player. Now, will he look better with the Jets? Have a very good defense. He was on a very bad defense last year, so he might even look better. But at the age of where he is in 30 and where he's going to be in 2026, yeah, he's a descending player. So as far as Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith, I have no idea. I'm telling you, the Eagles are projecting them to be on the field and meaningful players.
And I think the projection is overly optimistic at this stage. If they're planning him to be even what Bryce Huff was in 2023, not 2022, because that is, as you pointed out, and rightfully so, that was the exception, not the rule, to get 18 sacks. People just don't get 18 sacks. So he had the unbelievable best year of his career. I'll just compare him to this past year, and I don't know that either of those guys can come close to what he did in a declining year. So we'll see how it works out. Jeff Kerr's going to chime in on this. We need his take on did the Eagles improve themselves in the long run? I don't know how you argue. They could improve themselves in the short run. We'll get Jeff Kerr's take on the Son Reddick trade next here on Birds 365.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at Drytech. At Drytech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give Drytech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Birds 365 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Wow, Johnny Mac disappeared. I'm sure he's having...
he saw I was coming, Jody.
Transmission issues. No, he's had some connection issues with his internet outlet of late. But he sounded perfectly fine when he was saying the Eagles trade was a win for Howie Roseman. I tend to disagree. And we'll get him back up here at some point. So, Jeff Kerr, you got to go thumbs up, thumbs down I know it's a bigger, broader picture, and John and I touched on a lot of the aspects, and you and I can do so here. But at the end of the day, you got to come up with was the trade a win or was it a loss? What you believe right now. We'll decide 5 years from now when we look back at it and see how everybody did. That's when you get the definitive answer. But we as fans, as media members, need to give our projections before any snaps have ever been played. This a win or a loss for the Philadelphia Eagles? It's a trade.
I called it a huge gamble in a column I wrote for CBS Sports on it. I'm not a fan of it for 2024. I'm a fan of the pick, but that pick's in 2026. What's this team going to look like in 2026? Is Nolan Smith going to be good in 2026? Is Cindy Brown going to be good? Is Jalen Carter going to be an all-pro? Is Jordan Davis ever going to figure it out? That's what I don't know. But I do know for 2024, I think you might have the best pass rush in the NFL with Hassan Reddick, Bryce Huff, and Josh Sweat. But right now, Jody, I'm not pleased about the trade. I understand it from their end. I understand they weren't going to pay Hassan Reddick. They basically said, see you later. But I think you could have tried to work something out. You had the cap space. And this is a guy who's had 10 sacks every season with 4 different defensive coordinators. Now he's going to his 5th, where it was with Philly or with New York. I mean, look, I understand it from their end. I get it, but doesn't mean you got to be happy about it.
No, I mean, Jeff, and I apologize. I had to get up to get the dog out, but the big name aspect, the immediacy aspect of it, I think everybody's caught into that. And I think, Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman have different jobs. And one of Howie's jobs is to serve both masters, immediacy in the future. And Nick's trying to win games. So if you want Nolan Smith on the field, you believe in Nolan Smith. How's he going to get on the field if Hassan Reddick and Bryce Huff and Josh Sweat are here?
We were talking about that last night on WIP about, well, who's going to replace him? Well, it's Nolan Smith. That's the gist of it, right? Bryce Huff's going to start. Josh Sweat's going to start. Well, if Hassan was here, how many snaps realistically is Nolan Smith going to get? 10%? 20 at most? That's a first-round draft pick. Then other questions arise. Well, why did we draft this guy? Well, now you're getting your answer. They believe in Nolan Smith.
Here's the reason why I'm not buying Howie Roseman and John McMullen's line of logic. Just a couple of years ago, they had T-shirts made up on a quote from the Rams general manager, Mr. Snead, who said, F the picks. He didn't care. He traded picks. He was all in on a season, and the Rams won the Super Bowl. And if I'm Howie Roseman going into this season, I'm saying F the picks. I get the whole Howie's got to win this year, next year, the year after. He's got more responsibility than does the head coach. I agree with that. I understand that. But are they not all in for this upcoming season? Do you really want to trade your best defensive player for a pick you're not going to see for 3 years? There's overall philosophy, and then there's, in the moment philosophy. And in the moment is the Eagles are a Super Bowl contender. They want to be a Super Bowl contender. This is a trade that they may get dividends for 3 years down the road. I'm sorry, if you're an Eagle fan, why should you care about 3 years down the road? Howie Roseman might, but an Eagle fan should care about this upcoming season. And Howie Roseman shouldn't be able to, but we'll be better down the road. Well, when they get bounced in the first round of the playoffs again, is he going to be able to say, yeah, but we're going to get better down the road because that jet pick might actually be a 2 years from now? I'm not buying.
It's just ironic to me how you keep saying you're in a Super Bowl window, which you are, but if you're in a Super Bowl window, wouldn't you want your best roster on the field to win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, the F them picks less Snead thing. I think everybody got, like, the Eagles have never believed that. I mean, they would never say F them picks. I tend to lean more towards Les Snead because I think the NFL as a whole overvalues draft picks to a ludicrous degree against proven players, and that's what Hassan Reddick is. So I get that part of it, but the vast majority of the league thinks like Howie. They don't think like Les Snead. In fact, I would say the vast majority of the league leans even further to give me them picks over constant. Just let me get those picks. Let me get those picks, especially the younger GMs who are all like, I got to have those picks. Got to have that extra 4th round pick, that extra 7th round pick.
For the draft pick, I'm not going to play.
Yeah, exactly. So I get that part of it, but the whole vacuum aspect, I think people have a problem. Just, it's not one move. It's not just one thing. They don't want to pay the guy $20+ million.
That's what it comes down to. That's exactly what it comes down to. You look at the top edge rushers in the league: Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, what they're getting paid. Hassan Reddick has 4 straight double-digit sack seasons. Only Myles Garrett has done that. He's done it with 4 different defensive coordinators. Hassan Reddick has every right to go to an organization and say, where's my money? Why am I the 20th highest paid edge rusher in the NFL? Why is Bryce Huff, who literally has done this for 1 season, getting paid more money than me? He has every right to do that.
Oh, yeah.
I have defended him left and right on that.
Oh, my. I said he should have held in after 2022. That's when he should have seized his moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And, he was a good soldier about it. And, people were asking me, was he a locker room problem? I'm like, no, he wasn't. He really wasn't anything. He was just here. He loved to be here. He wanted to play here. But you want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to get paid the most money. I don't blame him.
And the reason why I'm just not buying, and I understand the economic workings of a National Football League team are different than just cold hard cash. Yeah, Jeff Lurie saved $20 million with the trade. The Philadelphia Eagles didn't because of the way Howie Roseman structures contracts and the fact that Hassan Reddick had phony years on the back end of his deal. And they're going to take this dead cap hit this year with him being traded. So they didn't really save $15 million. They saved $1 million. That's different than saving 50. They would have had to pay him $20 million. You would have had to pay somebody $20 million. That's Jeff Lurie's money. Do we really want to start a GoFundMe page for Jeff Lurie because he would have had to pay his?
If Howie wanted Hassan Reddick, he could have had Hassan Reddick. It's not about saving money. Jeffrey Lurie has proven time and time again he will spend money to make this team the best possible.
He's one of the few that does it.
Yeah, it's about the mindset of building the roster and saying, all right, I do not think this guy is valued at over $20 million per year. And that creates a domino effect. If you said, well, we have him, so let's make him happy. Then all of a sudden the next guy says, what about me? What about me? What about me? That's why you have to be disciplined about it. It's not about saving money.
Well, then why'd they redo Josh Sweat's deal?
Because
Josh Sweat didn't have a choice.
Well, that too, but they gave it again. It was very similar to the cornerback situation last year, defensive back situation, except they added one. Last year they had the players. They had the 3 players. It was Slay, it was Bradbury, it was CJ Gardner-Johnson, and they knew they could keep 2 of them, or they could have kept all 3, but they said we want to keep 2 of them. And then it toggled back and forth. Originally, it was going to be Slay and CJ. Then it was going to be CJ and Bradbury. Then it ended up being Bradbury and Slay. That was the plan. Now, they added Huff to the mix. And by that point, when Huff came on, they gave both players permission to seek trades. Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat got his deal done. Cheaper. And once he got his deal done, Hassan was out in the cold. Very similar to CJ. And he wasn't going to be back because they factored in they could have 2 of the 3 for what they wanted to accomplish. And the whole picture, it was very similar. And if Reddick would have came to an agreement like Sweat, then Sweat would have been out the door. But Sweat got it done early. The Eagles were able to save some money in that. In the case of Hassan, again, the best case scenario would have been 18, in my assumption, from a team-friendly standpoint. If they could have got 18, I think they would have done it. You have to place value on players. It's not like you can't call up Jeffrey Lurie and say, hey, pay this guy, pay that guy. He'll probably do it if you want to figure out the bookkeeping. He'll probably give you whatever you want. So this is all on Howie. Don't blame anybody else. He does not think that's a $20 million player. If he's wrong, he's going to look bad.
This is what I guess kind of bothers me with the whole Reddick thing. And I compared this back to when Trotter was going through his thing with the Eagles. And we all know the Eagles don't value a linebacker, but Jeremiah Trotter was coming off an all-pro season. He was an ascending player. I think he was 25 at the time. And the Eagles tagged him. And again, different front office, of course, but same philosophy. And Trotter wanted his pay, and the Eagles didn't want to pay. Now, again, Trotter was a lot younger, but the Eagles said, I ain't paying the linebacker that. See you later. Well, guess who got burned late in the 2002 season and in the NFC Championship game when they had a Super Bowl team? Oh, the Eagles, because they have Barry Gardner and LeVon Kirkland back there instead of Jeremiah Trotter. So
Barry Gardner,
yeah,
hell of an agent, Barry Gardner.
Oh, he had a hell of an agent
than better agent than player.
No, absolutely. And then I just hope the same thing doesn't happen when it's December and January and they can't rush the passer because Josh Sweat disappeared in the second half again. Now, I will defend Josh well in this. He was a good second half player in 2021, 2022. And the Eagles are banking on that. They're also banking on Bryce Huff being a good second half player like he was last year. And obviously a lot more. Hassan was good in the second half really every year, but last year. I think they're banking on the upside of Huff, the upside of Sweat, the upside of Nolan Smith, and the eventual decline of Hassan Reddick. I just don't see why you couldn't keep him for 2024 and then just move on.
That to me was the key move if they were going to get anything done. And the one thing we don't know, and we have yet to, this is going to be, at least for me, a key factor. If a deal gets done between the Jets and Hassan, I would have thought that it would have already been announced because they had all that time when Hassan had permission to seek a trade, negotiate with all other teams, and put his number out there through his agent to find out what his asking price is going to be. The fact that we're now on Monday morning and the trade was announced on Friday, I get it. They're shut down for the weekend if you're an NFL.
Holiday weekend too.
Holiday weekend, but I have heard too many times it's a 365-day a year job. I need to know what that number is, and we'll find out what that number is, and we should absolutely put that into play here with the Philadelphia Eagles and what it would have probably cost to keep Hassan Reddick, because remember, Hassan was on record. Johnny Mac, you're down there all the time, so I'm going to ask you to give me an opinion on Hassan Reddick as a guy. He said he wanted to stay. He came out and vehemently shut down the report that he requested a trade. He came out and said, no. I didn't ask for a trade. The Eagles granted me permission so that I could check against the what his value is on the open market. So he was not forcing the Eagles' hand a little bit, as far as I know. You were there last year. You saw him with his teammates. You know him as a guy. Did Hassan Reddick want to leave the Philadelphia Eagles?
No, he's a great guy, very professional. As I said, could have held in after the 2022 season. If I were his agent, I would argue that that's exactly what he should have done, to be honest. I've said that time and time again. In a lot of ways, we've been making comps. I'm going to make a weird comp to DeMarco Murray when the Dallas Cowboys just ran him into the ground and the Eagles signed him, and he had nothing left. And he went to Tennessee, had a decent season, but he didn't have the same juice because he had like 400 touches the year before the Eagles signed him, and there was just nothing left. The Eagles played Hassan Reddick 75% of the snaps last year, undersized guy. I don't think it's to that level where he's got nothing left, but I think that plays into it as well. They rode that guy, and they rode him hard over the past two seasons. And that, unfortunately, this is an unforgiving sport and an unforgiving sentiment when it comes to evaluating players. And they know they ran him into the ground. And I think that factors into their decision saying, now, when you're saying Hassan didn't want to leave, no, he didn't want to leave, but he wanted $25 million from what I understand.
That's top 5 in the league. that just wasn't going to
And
happen.
and by the way, from a production standpoint, I get it. From his standpoint, I get it. I get it 100% from his standpoint. I'm not saying I don't, but if I'm on the other end and I'm saying we just rode this guy and we're going to pay him 25. It's not about paying him for what he did. Sometimes you do that. I always bring up Derek Jeter and the Yankees. Sometimes you say, you know what? Keep going. You've done so much for this organization.
Even though you shouldn't. That's baseball too. Baseball, you get paid for what you did. Football, you get paid for what you're going to do.
Yeah. In the case of Hassan Reddick, yeah, they don't think he's that player moving forward. And if they're wrong, and by the way, I hope they are wrong because Hassan is a good guy.
I do too.
That's what their belief is. He's not going to be that same player.
Yeah, and I'm evaluating the Eagles' evaluation. I think they're wrong. I do not think he's a drastically descending player. His numbers came down slightly this year. Why do I think his numbers came down? Because of their defensive coordinator. That's plain and simple. In my evaluation of the Eagles' defense this past year, and Hassan Reddick in it, he declined statistically production-wise because of the DC, not because he got old, not because they rode him like a stallion.
Well, they did.
I believe it was their defensive coordinated scheme.
I think they wrote him too much like a stallion. But by the way, I want to add this on while we're still talking about Hassan here. Another reason there was so much vitriol in this trade, not because you traded a good pass rusher, you traded an ambassador to the community, a homegrown guy, a guy who wanted to be here. Like Hassan Reddick was the Philadelphia Eagle. He fit the mold they want this organization wants, and you just moved on from him. Do you think they would have done that if he was, say, a draft pick by the Eagles?
I hope it had nothing to do with anything. And I like Hassan Reddick.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're talking about the only reason.
I honestly don't care. I want to narrow focus back in on the football player. The fact that he was good to compute, the fact that he was a home guy. You want to get moved on from by the Philadelphia Eagles? Be a Philadelphia guy who started elsewhere and then came home. And then you're guaranteed to be run out the door. Swift, Bayard, Hassan.
Well, I'll say this.
The coming home song has a link to it. And when it's over and done with, see you later, bye.
Of those three,
you're a Philly guy.
Of those three, the one that got traded wanted to be here. I'm not so certain the running back wanted to be here.
Yeah, I don't think he wanted to be here either, but I'm sure Alameda wanted to be here. But
I'm sure he did.
Oh,
he's not moving far either.
Add him to the group. 4 ex-Philly guys who this year became ex-Phillies.
I'm sure Alameda would have liked to stick around, and he always had a role in Nick Sirianni's offense, but it's no longer Nick Sirianni's offense, so he didn't have a role. But,
I always like talking to him too. It's a shame.
He's a good guy. Now, Jody brought up, and it's, the defensive coordinators, plural, were terrible last year. I mean, it's fair to point, although I think Sean Desai wasn't as bad as people spun him to be.
As bad as Matt Patricia.
He was a scapegoat for the personnel.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. Well, and again, I don't get to see behind the scenes fully. If Sean Desai, that there was a lot of talk about presence, and if people didn't believe in him, people don't believe in him. You can't make people. But I think from a fundamental standpoint, I don't think he was terrible at his job. Maybe he doesn't have the presence to be in that position. Maybe that part of it's true. I can't speak to that. But I know who does have the presence to be in that job, and that's Vic Fangio. So if that part of it, if you want to blame it on the coordinator this year, don't you got to give the coordinator the rope? And if he doesn't want that type of player, if he wants Andrew Van Ginkel, you should have signed Andrew Van Ginkel. That's another story. But if he wants that type of player, and he wants that quarter flat defender who can drop in coverage when they need to drop in coverage, and he says, should you listen to him?
I've listened to Vic Fangio. That's just my opinion. I mean, I don't think Jalen Ramsey likes listening to Vic Fangio. I don't think Xavier Howard.
A lot of people. didn't like.
Well, you know what? It's funny when you hear the stories about what went on in Miami, and I'm like, why does Miami's defense act like they were a top 5 unit? Maybe they would have been if they would have listened to the guy.
Yeah, well, they were a lot better than they were.
I just think it's funny Ramsey's complaining when literally the guy had a 17 passer rating in coverage last year. That's first team All-Pro numbers, and you're complaining about a guy who put you in success? I don't get it. I love Jalen Ramsey. He's a stud, but I think he thinks he's Deion Sanders, and he's not.
Yeah, I was going to say that's on the player. That's not on the scheme. That's not on the coach. Guy just likes to complain. He's a diva. He's a talented diva. He's a great player, but he's a stone-cold diva who's not feeling comfortable. He's not bitching about something. So the fact that he bitched about Vic Fangio shouldn't surprise anybody. All right, Jeff Kerr, this move by the Eagles, we're going to debate it next week, the week after, the month after, first week of the season, fourth month of the season, the year after that, and at some point, 3 or 4 years down the road.
Or 20 years down the road, we'll still be complaining about it.
20, no, certainly 5. Will it have an effect on Eagles draft? Since they're now taking one of their pass rushers out of the mix, how they was going to be used, how he was going to be played, the future and everything else, all in, do you think this now puts more of an emphasis on the Eagles going for a pass rusher in the draft, first round, second round, third round, fourth round? How much does it add to Howie's ability to go, well, we always draft in the trenches. Trenches first. When in doubt, go to the trenches. Are they going to the trenches again? If they've got their pass rushes for this year, since we're saying they could afford to give up a sign because they got to get Nolan Smith on the field, what do you say if they take a pass rusher in the first round?
So one of my bold predictions for the draft, and keep in mind I'm saying bold because this is stuff I'm hearing at the owners' meetings, but I said I wouldn't have been surprised if they drafted a pass rusher in the first or second round of the draft, and this is when they had Hassan Reddick on the roster. And now I'm really starting to think that that could be the move if a guy falls to 22. I think it's really going to be the best available player, as it should be. It just depends what they feel is the best available player. There could be this is my prediction. I think they go in the trenches as of April 1st. I think they will pick in the trenches, and I'm going to lean toward pass rusher.
Yeah, if they do take a pass rusher, then I will immediately reverse my opinion. They do not believe in Nolan Smith if they take a pass rusher. As simple as that. If they take a pass rusher at 22, even if it's best player available type situation, at that point you say, you know what? All right, we're going to move down. If you can move down, you go in a different direction if you believe in Nolan Smith. If you don't, and there's legitimate reasons why maybe you shouldn't. His shoulder, we'll see how he, works out in the offseason. We'll see how if he's remade his body, if he's added some weight, all that kind of stuff. As we get back into it, Eagles start April 15th, I believe, the offseason program.
By the way, John,
mandatory minicamp, by the way. Yeah.
Boy, how do you like how that dropped during Phillies opening day along with Sam Reddick?
Well, the NFL does that. So the NFL releases the entire league at one time. And sometimes there's some tweaks, but yeah, they're going to have a mandatory minicamp. Now, part of that is new coordinators. Probably the new coordinators are saying, let's give us some time with the stinking players, Howie. And if you go back to Nick Sirianni's first year, 2021, they had a mandatory minicamp schedule. And we were still, he canceled it because
he canceled it.
We were in the death throes of COVID, this silly time that we were. And the players, he was negotiating to get the players in for off-season work. Like a bunch of them weren't going to show up because it was still COVID. They were like, we're not going to do anything. And he said, if you show up for the off-season work, we won't have mandatory minicamp. And so he canceled it, and it worked out, and they stayed relatively healthy. And they said, let's continue this on. Let's continue. And now it's back, and it should be back. I think that's a net positive to have mandatory minicamp when you have two new coordinators. Even though they're veteran coordinators, you still need to teach guys stuff. And you need to get young players involved, and you need to get Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith, as example, involved. I think that's a positive that mandatory minicamp is back. Jeff,
So,
any
but
negative?
let me ask you a question on that, John and Jeff. How'd that conversation go with Howie and the Eagles head of training medicine that we believe had a major say in no mandatory minicamp, less hitting, shorter practices, everything else? We're going to be very safe with our players and put safety ahead of actual work. How'd that conversation go when Howie had to tell him that, hey, we're going back to mandatory minicamp because the coordinators say we need it?
This is what I would have said. Well, do you want to lose 6 or 7 to end the year again? That's all I would have said. Shut up.
I mean, that's the way this league works, the pendulum effect. It didn't work last year, so you can change it. If it works, you can't change it.
Yeah, like they had every right not to do mandatory minicamp last year because of what happened in 2022. And I'm sitting in the back of my mind thinking, well, wait a minute, you got 2 new coordinators. Shouldn't you at least try? But now
probably would have helped Sean Desai.
I think it would significantly help Sean Desai.
Right. Didn't they have 2 new coordinators last year? And
that's what I said. That's what I just said. And they should have had it, and they didn't. But hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, 2 new coordinators with no experience, so they had no cachet to say, all right, I need this, I need that. By the way, that is going down, and I'll leave it there with you at Jeff Kerr CBS. Make sure you follow Jeff on X, Twitter, doing some baseball. I saw you down there at the Phillies. You get a Phillies win finally.
But I'll tell you what, John, I have, and again, I love Eagles fans, but I have much more of an appreciation for them after this weekend's Phillies series, just because Phillies fans or Philly fans in general, let's treat every baseball game like it's an NFL game.
Because it's a football city, Jeff. So
absolutely
everything is life and death. Everything is life and death.
So I'll say this off the record. I was talking to some people in the Phillies, and they said, well, you're going to get on Yohan Rojas for not getting you hit. You better get on Bryce.
Yeah.
You don't have a hit either.
I mean, they treat every Phillies game like it's an Eagles game. And, if you're a manager, you got to be savvy when you're playing 162 and maybe your bullpen had to pitch 7 innings one day. Well, then you're not going to, you're not going to pitch certain guys. You may need to rest some guys.
They have 2 off days in April. 2. Oh, and by the way, it's going to rain this week. So those off days are going away. Yeah,
it's raining already.
But
I think they played
if it rains, that becomes an off day. It's not like they disappear.
No.
You just have to adjust on the fly. And you're right. Everybody second guesses the adjustment that the manager's got to make.
Everybody hated the lineup yesterday, and that lineup got 3 runs in the 7th inning for them.
Right. They won.
You went down a Phillies wormhole. What the hell I was talking about? Oh, the coordinators. Jeffrey Lurie made a big deal about how good the coordinators were and having experienced coordinators, and you got to have that experience. Well, what the hell happened? They went to the Super Bowl with inexperienced coordinators. They hired inexperienced coordinators. Is it just a matter of, oh, that didn't work, we got to go the other direction? When I was talking about that pendulum, oh, well, these guys suck, so let's bring in some veteran guys.
I'll tell you what, I was sitting right next to Dan Quinn at the start of the NFC Coaches Breakfast last week. And he thought he was so ready for questions and questions on end about his draft pick at number 2. And here's little old me. Let's mention Brian Johnson. He gave me a big smile on his face and gave me a 5-minute answer. He could not wait.
Everybody probably pissed at you for, letting Quinn, I can't think of the word. What a political word. Jeez. I'm losing my mind.
Filibustering?
Filibuster, yeah. Never let the coach filibuster. Thank you.
Yeah, but you know what, though? A lot of them use that for content because...
Nick loves the filibuster. And you get dirty looks when you set him up for the filibuster.
But it was funny, and, I wrote a column on it saying Brian Johnson's going to get the opportunity. He didn't really get with the Eagles.
How do you figure?
Well, they're actually implementing some of his designs in that offense.
Who says?
Who says? What do you mean?
Yeah, who says they're going to implement things? I'm throwing a BS flag. I'm telling whoever told you that is lying to Jeff Kerr's face.
He's the assistant head coach.
Who's the offensive coordinator?
Who cares? He calls the plays.
Who cares? Are you kidding me? I think Brian Johnson's going to have a really nice year because he's going to be doing next to nothing in Washington.
Yeah, assistant head coach is tends to be more of a ceremonial type.
Yeah.
I actually think he's part of the brain trust. Well, he is part of the brain trust.
Every situation is different because here they have an associate head coach. They have an assistant head coach, and that's more ceremonial.
Is Kevin Patullo technically the associate
He's
head
the
coach?
associate head coach, and that's meaningful. Like he's got a lot of power. So every situation's different. I have no idea.
By the way, John, I got to give you a shout out here since apparently none of you beat guys, none of us national guys know who Jake Rosenberg is. I'm like, John McMullen literally just mentioned it 2 hours before he left.
I talked about him that day.
I was dying, and then I had someone say, I don't know who he is because I don't tweet about him. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not on Twitter every goddamn moment of my life.
Yeah, now you got to learn Bryce Johnston.
Yeah, Bryce Johnson.
And Adam Berry, Andrew's younger brother.
Adam Berry's he's moving up in that organization.
Oh yeah,
we shall see.
The GM factory.
They're more the GM factory than they are the quarterback factory. That transformation.
You mean you're not as enthused of the Will Greer signing as everybody else?
I would have rather had Matt Corral, who showed out this weekend in the UFL.
Oh, I didn't get any UFL. UFL. How long has the NFL been around? I know we got to let you go, Jeff.
104 years.
One game, the UFL is better with technology and officiating and transparency in one game than the NFL is for over 100 years. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, how about that Brad Wing fake punt? Did you guys see that?
Oh, the guy hit a 64-yard field goal twice. They called timeout. He banged it through 64 yards. Yeah. Then he did it again. He hadn't kicked a field goal since high school.
A meaningful field goal.
Meaningful field.
So this is what's funny about the Brad Wing thing. So obviously we remember Brad Wing played for the Giants. So there was a 58-yard kick, and Wing was the holder. They basically decided, San Antonio said, you know what? Yeah, we're not going to do this. And there's like 3 seconds left in the half. So Wing lines up like he's going to get the ball. Everybody knows he's throwing it. He just goes back, takes about 2 steps to his right, and just throws his bomb. And you're like, what the hell? What's he doing? He throws it to his left end, and he's wide open, and he caught it for the touchdown. And Wing says, yeah, that technically wasn't the guy I'm supposed to go to. Oh, by the way, we never executed it in practice.
More power to him for making it up on the fly.
Probably a lot of those punters were high school. I think he's one of those Australian though, so he probably wasn't a quarterback.
I mean, he said like when he was in the NFL, he did a lot of that stuff. They just never. They're always too afraid to do it. And he said, this is what we like about it. We have plays like this. And he said, you might see more of it.
There's a couple things I like about the UFL in weekend number 1. We'll get to that. But we got to let Jeff Kerr go first. We've had him for like 40 minutes.
Sorry, bud.
Jeff Kerr, thank you very much. We will talk to you again next Monday. Appreciate you jumping in today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks,
Jeff Kerr, CBSSports.com, our regular Monday early guest to get the week off on a good footing. All right, Johnny Mac here with you on Birds 365 with my partner, Johnny Mac. We'll come back, talk, as I said, a little UFL, and then we're going to have Andrew DiCecco, InsideTheBirds.com and podcast is going to jump in. He's been busy doing draft evaluation stuff as well. So we'll get his Reddick take, but then talk a little bit about the Eagles in the draft. I want to talk about how you Eagle fans can save some good money on your car insurance. Here's your chance to save upwards of 40% right now with one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call one of the 2 managing general partners, either Jim or Fran, and tell them you're a friend of both JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at Drytech. At Drytech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give Drytech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Here with you on Birds 365. Thanks, Jeff Kerr, for jumping in, continuing the Hassan Reddick conversation, which is only going to go on for years now. But nothing will be decided in the next couple of months, even couple of years. It's going to take a while to actually be able to fully decide whether the Eagles made a mistake or made a smart trade for the future. We shall see. Speaking of the future, more immediate future, and that's why I don't like the Reddick trade, because I don't like what it does for the immediacy of the Eagles in this upcoming season. When are the Eagles going to address the fact that their offensive line depth is seriously depleted? That Kelsey guy retired. Got to replace him. Not going to be easy, but you have a person ready to step in and at least give it a yeoman shot. But then that opens up a hole in your offensive line, in the starting offensive line, and you've lost a couple of key depth pieces this year. You've added one, Matt Hennessy. Just the raw numbers, John, significantly down from where last season ended, and that has been a strength of the Eagles for years. His offensive line, we give Stoutland a lot of credit for it, and he deserves it. When are they going to start to put some bodies back into the offensive line, J-Mac? Because this offseason, and who knows, Matt Hennessy could be a real nice player. When he plays, he's efficient, but he's been oft injured during his career, so you don't know that that's not going to happen again. At some point, don't they have to start addressing offensive line depth, and isn't the well running dry here?
Yeah, I think, it's going to be a big part of the draft, the offensive line. We've talked about it potentially at the top. Certainly I guarantee they take an offensive lineman in those top three picks, one of the three, and they might take one at 22nd overall. I wouldn't surprise me if they double dip in the draft at the position. They've been looking at a ton of offensive linemen. We're going to have Andrew DiCecco. Hopefully, Zander, he didn't get the link, doing some, if you didn't see the text, but so we got to connect with him. He's been at a lot of pro days. Jeff Stoutland was down at Maryland. Top 30 visits that we know of. I always say, I pay more attention to themes. Well, that's been a theme in the top 30 visits. Zach Zinter from Michigan. I know Christian Mahogany from Boston College. Brandon Coleman from TCU. Cooper Beebe from Kansas State. Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma, who's a big potential first-round pick. Travis Glover from Georgia State. I mean, these are just some of their top 30, but they're going to go heavy offensive line, it looks like, in the draft. And plus, they'll probably bring in a couple undrafted kids, as usual, for Jeff Stoutland to long term. I think it's not about free agency when it comes to replenishing the offensive line. I think it's going to be about the draft.
All right, but the Eagles also have 8 picks in this upcoming draft, and we'd like to point out the fact that they've got 3 in the first 53, which is good. They've got 2 second-round picks, which is nice. But then they've got 5 of their 8 overall picks come from the 4th round on. So when you're talking about 5th-round draft picks, Tyler Steen was a 3rd-round draft pick, and they're already looking to potentially be better than Tyler Steen. If Tyler Steen had proven himself, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. All right, you just move your right guard over to center and you plug in your new right guard and you're good to go. Well, Tyler Steen was a higher draft pick than the great majority Eagles draft pick this year. So it's going to be a little bit of a roll of the dice, is it not? Even with Stoutland used to
as far as enrollment. Not as far as depth. I mean, yeah, you can find a depth piece on day 3. But yeah, if you want somebody to step in and play, it's going to have to be at 22, 50, or 53. And they're going to have to hit. Again, I'm very comfortable saying they're going to take an offensive lineman in one of those 3 picks.
One of those 3 picks, I agree.
And, they might need them to start at right guard. If it's the case of that 1st-round pick, it's probably a tackle who's going to start at right guard, move out to replace Lane Johnson, whatever need be. That'll be the plan. If it's 50-53, it's probably going to be a more natural guard who can maybe step in as an immediate starter. And you'll have some hiccups. You always do with young players. But if they're talented and Jeff Stoutland we trust, although, maybe we trust too much because Tyler Steen isn't. Nobody's saying, oh, just put Tyler Steen in there. So it's fair to point out. But I don't think anybody has a problem with Tyler Steen as a backup. So all of a sudden, if you're able to get that starter, all of a sudden he's got guard, tackle versatility for game day. Then you have Hennessy, who's got the interior versatility as the game day backups. That might not be a bad way to go, but you need to hit on that first pick, whether it's 22, 50, 53 on the offensive line.
And I think you've got the right read on it, and it scares me. If you're using your 1st-round pick, number 22, on an offensive lineman that you're planning on playing at guard until either Jordan Mailata goes down with an injury or Lane Johnson goes down with an injury and or retires in Lane Johnson's, that's a risky thing. To use a 1st-round draft pick on a guy that you're going to start inside, move outside. I'm much more comfortable with what they're doing with Jurgens, moving a guy from guard to center. If you're a center, I think you can make the move from guard. If you're truly a tackle, and if you're using a 1st-round pick on a guy, his best position better be tackle. That has to be, for me, his best position. And you're believing that if you move him to guard, he won't kill you there. I think that transition is much more difficult than guard to center. Guard to tackle is something that's much more difficult to project and do. And we've got a prime example of it here this year, Tyler Steen. He was a tackle that they decided they could move into guard and he'd be okay there at guard. How'd that work out? I think even with Stoutland in tow, that's a risky proposition.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted Tyler Steen to be the starting right guard by year 2. And maybe he will be. It's not over. by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe he takes off. Coaches often talk about the most improvement you'll see from a player generally is from year 1 to year 2. So who knows? Maybe it starts to click for him. But yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I think the most difficult transition is guard to tackle. I think the easiest is the interior. Those guys can usually play everywhere, most of them, center, both guard spots. Tackle to guard's more difficult than guard to tackle, I would say.
Right.
So, if somebody like Guyton, who's got tremendous athleticism, and maybe he projects a little bit better inside with the quickness. He's maybe too tall, but people say he's 6'7". Hey, Landon Dickerson's 6'6". They seem to be doing okay with that.
Right.
Brandon Brooks was 6'5". So really going to make that much of a difference? I doubt that. So Amarius Mims is a great athlete, but he's very raw. And we're going to have Andrew DiCecco here. He's really plugged in. He went to a bunch of pro days, so we'll get him off his pro day tour. And I know he was down at Maryland and Stoutland was there. They have a couple draftable offensive linemen. The Eagles are I think they're going to draft 2 offensive linemen. And, if they add picks, maybe even 3.
And Howie does like to add picks. We do know that. So that's something we are going to keep our eye on. He's McMullen on McDonald. That makes this Mac Birds 365 coming up next. We've got content producer. He does it all, produces on air reporting for InsideTheBirds.com and Inside the Birds podcast. Andrew DiCecco joins us next here on Birds 365.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at Drytech. At Drytech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give Drytech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Johnny Mac and Jody Mac, Mac and Mac guys, joined by Andrew DiCecco, who I believe is home again. We've had him from the road. He's out and about. He's always doing stuff. Where are you right now, DiCecco?
I'm in I'm just outside of Philadelphia. I'm back home.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I think I've seen that background before. But yes, giving you props for being out there on the road. How has your tour of pro days around the Northeast gone?
Yeah, it's been great, Jody. Thanks for asking. I've run into a lot of Eagles personnel, notably Ben Ijolana, who, John, you know, is a Northeast area scout. I saw Amina Solomon at the Temple one. Then I saw Jeff Stoutland at the Maryland one. He was the first guy I saw when I walked right into the building, shook his hand, and he had some eyes on some of the linemen that they have there. And at Rutgers, new defensive backs coach Christian Parker was there to get some looks at Max Melton, actually put him through his workout. So I like going to these things and observing and talking to a lot of people and seeing what's going on, who's there from the Eagles and what I can glean that I didn't see at the combine. Maybe some guys didn't test, and I want to see if that matches what I saw on tape.
You mentioned Stoutland. We'll start there since it's always fun to see the people that maybe don't get a lot of notoriety. Amina's one of them. She was at Temple.
Mm-hmm.
I know Howie thinks very highly of her. But when Stoutland shows up, it tends to mean something. So Maryland's got a couple potential offensive line prospects. Can you kind of give us a gauge on where they might be for potential Eagles interests?
Yeah, so Delmar DJ Glaze is someone who is probably going to be a fourth-round pick, early fourth-round pick, maybe creep into day two at the back end of it. He can play any position on the offensive line. Was a right tackle last season for Maryland. Probably projects as a swing tackle, I would say. A lot of teams view him as a guard. Then they have a player named Gottlieb, and his last name, there's no chance I'm going to be able to pronounce it. Even when he said, a lot of us asked him, how do you pronounce it? He said it. We still didn't know. But he's someone that's always been playing football for, I believe, 5 seasons, was an NFL Combine invite, was a Senior Bowl guy, immensely athletic, played left tackle for the Terps last season. A little bit more of a project, I would say, but very intriguing. And they had a guy named Corey Bullock, their left guard last season, was an honorable mention player who, I mean, just talking to some people out there, he's someone that isn't getting the notoriety that got a lot of that had a lot of interest. So it was worth mentioning that after the workout, they were gone for 90 minutes doing a meeting with personnel there. So obviously, there's a lot of teams that are going to be interested in those guys, but they were the star of the show for sure.
So let me ask you this question because I absolutely don't know the answer. As a member of the media, you show up at a pro day. Do you guys get any access to the players? Are you allowed to talk to them afterwards? Can you request individual players that you want to talk to? How does that work?
Great question. So a lot of times, Jody, they only make certain players available. But if there's a guy that I wanted to talk to off to the side or somebody to that effect, I'll flag down the AD and say, hey, look, are you able to grab this guy for me? I just had a few questions. And sometimes it's just me sort of reaffirming what I saw on tape, asking questions maybe about a previous injury, anything. And so they work. I work with those guys, and they're able to kind of make that happen. And it's funny at Temple, for example, they had Jordan McGee, the linebacker, who was available, and he's the guy that's going to be drafted day 3. His stock's climbing. But there was a D2 guy from Lock Haven University where I spent some time once upon a time who was the guy that everybody was talking about, met with every scout there, running back Chris Collier, ran a 4.48, jumped out of the building and tested really well, has some pro days has some local days coming up. So you could just walk right up to some of those guys.
Very nice.
Max Melton, you mentioned Rutgers a little bit there. That's a guy who's getting a lot of hype recently. And Christian Parker, the Eagles' new defensive backs coach with Vic Fangio, big lengthy kid. Maybe, not that, I guess, it's funny. If you're 6 foot, you're lengthy. If you're under, you're not lengthy. But he looks just his body type. A little bit undersized, though, I would say, as
Yes.
far as weight goes. Where do you project him as any? And by the way, Egg Harbor City, I believe, native
right.
as well. So
You're right. So I would say that he's someone that's going to probably go mid to early second round. His stock is soaring. There's a lot of people there that you sort of hear some buzz, and I think that he's somebody that's going to continue to pop up throughout the process as we get closer to the draft. As someone who's going to go higher than some may have expected as we walked into the pre-draft process. But I mean, yeah, his one thing that struck me with him, his legs are like toothpicks, but he has very long arms.
You mean like Devontae Smith?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a great comparison, Jody. They're exactly like Devontae's legs. So you're like, okay. I mean, I don't know how he would hold up on the outside. He's about 5'11", 185. Fluid, smart, tough, competitive, all the things you want. But I think he's more of a nickel player. That's sort of how I project him at the pro level. And I think that that's where his early playing time is going to come. Now, he also takes a lot of pride in playing on special teams. When I asked him about that after the workout, like he can do it all. And he called himself the most versatile cornerback in the draft.
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about the nickels in this draft, Andrew. Maybe, yeah, obviously not at the top, but as far as the depth at cornerback position, a lot of people have said nickel is a strength, and obviously the Eagles have a need at that particular position. Although Avonte Maddox is still out there, that's weird.
It can't hurt to bring him back on a flyer, but I wouldn't promise him anything.
No, I agree with that, but why not? And we assume Isaiah Rodgers will be back, but he could play outside. He's played outside in the past. He could factor in because of his size. I think he could factor inside, but that remains to be seen. And they signed the kid from Las Vegas, Tyler Hall, who's more of a natural slot. So they have some options, but there's no concrete, that's the way we're going to go. So, second round nickel, would that be out of the question for the Philadelphia Eagles? They have 2 second-round picks.
I think that's well within the realm of possibility, John. Look, when you send your new defensive backs coach, and yes, it is Rutgers. It's not exactly you're not going across the country. You're not going across the country to see the player, but put him through his workout. And the sense that I've gotten is that the Eagles really like the kid, and he's someone who has inside-outside versatility, and he can be a plug-and-play guy right off the bat, which is most important, especially when you look at what the Eagles have, as you outlined right now, currently at nickel. They don't have any sure things or slam dunks. Max Melton would be that, and he could potentially grow into an outside corner down the line. But, I mean, you're talking about someone that's going to give you instant production there on a very cost-effective contract is certainly something to keep an eye on.
All right, so I need a projection, crystal ball look at things from you. Eagles take Melton in the second round. Is he off the Eagles by the end of his first contract? Do they trade him after 3 years? Or does he actually make it to his second contract? But because we've seen this offseason, if you're a Philly guy, Philly neighbor, you don't last here. Hassan Reddick came and left. DeAndre Swift came and left. Olamide Zaccheaus came and left. Kevin Byard didn't even get a full season in. He only got a half a season left before they ran him out of town. So if Melton comes in, he's going to have a shelf life here in Philadelphia that he's going to have to get out of town. Which will it be? Just one contract, or will he get into contract number 2?
No, he'll be a second contract guy. Again,
Okay.
younger player, a position of value. I mean, there's a lot of things at play here, but also he's someone that can do a multitude of things. Special teams was something that he made it a point to outline that he is not averse to doing and anticipates playing at the next level in addition to his cornerback duties. So I think that there's just going to be too much value there. Also a really high character guy. So I think he'll be somebody that's going to be a cornerstone type of player, Jody, for a defense down the line.
All right. But Jody gave you one of those Philadelphia players, the most high profile, Hassan Reddick, on his way out the door, 90 minutes up the turnpike to Jody's New York Jets. First of all, your thoughts on the trade, and then does that factor in edge rusher 22 overall in the first round of the draft for you?
Yeah, I was driving back from Maryland when the trade happened, and my phone started going nuts, and I was like, what's going on? And I had to look over, and Hassan Reddick is traded. I was like, I mean, I guess that was that April 1st, $1 million thing that they pushed back was a hard deadline. So, I mean, I had a sense that they had to make a decision one way or the other coming up on today, but I didn't like the trade, guys. I mean, if you're a team with the Super Bowl window wide open, or at least cracked open for the foreseeable future, you want to hold on to as many of those key players, those veteran leaders that you can. And I thought that he deserves, and you agree with me, you guys agree with me, that he deserves to be paid like a premier pass rusher. And the going rate for that, guys, is $23 million a season, which the Eagles weren't going to pay to a player approaching 30 who logged a ton of miles last season. Now, to your question, John, in the first round, do I view that as a viable possibility for the Eagles to take an edge rusher? I do, but I even thought that before Haason Reddick was traded. Again, looking beneath the surface here, it's not a bold prediction to suggest, if you know, as we all do, as we follow the team and pay attention, the Eagles have Josh Sweat, who's likely playing his last season here in Philadelphia. Brandon Graham, this is his swan song in year 15. So the only players that are assured to be under contract for 2025 are Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith, unless I'm forgetting somebody. Zach
Bond.
Julian
No, but Bond's only a 1-year contract.
That's true. That's
right.
true.
And then you got Julian Aquara, and probably another 1-year deal.
Yeah, we've forgotten Julian Okwara. That's
so knowing how much the Eagles value the position, guys. It wouldn't be a surprise, but rather an expectation, at least on my end, that you would see that in the first or second round. Also, you have to look at a lot of their pass rush is is on a projection this year. Bryce Huff has never played a large sample size. Josh Sweat wore down the stretch last season. You look at Nolan Smith, he's a huge question mark, and there's injury concerns, and he couldn't even get on the field when the Eagles desperately needed another edge rusher to alleviate some of those snaps from Reddick and Sweat. So really all they've done is swapped out Huff and Reddick. I don't know that you can say that they've gotten better. They've have a lot more question marks there. But I think drafting a premier edge rusher in the draft adds another firepower fastball off the edge and gives you another body there.
I'm sorry, I just have to laugh when you say they value the position. Except they don't want to pay Josh what Haason Reddick has earned. They value it to a point, and then they don't value it at all when they think that, oh my God, he's 30 years old, he's going backwards, he's a declining player. So in certain ways they value it, in other ways.
Well, Andrew's right about the workload, which I mentioned in the first hour.
How many snaps did percentage snaps did they play on the other side?
74 and 71. I believe Reddick was 74. Sweat played 71.
And which of those two players look like a guy who is declining more this past year?
Well, they both, to be fair, went radio silent. But
they both. Yeah.
I mean, Josh to me looked like he was the one that was lagging a little bit more. I didn't see a whole lot of bursts from him. So everyone said, "Oh yeah, they're fine." They're on Twitter. I put out right after the trade, they should be looking to draft a first-round edge rusher. They're fine. They got Zach Bond, which I laughed at because that's a projection. He really hasn't proven that. They got
that's a projection. That's a projection.
Somebody threw that out there. They said they're fine, and they have Zach Bond. I'm like, okay.
And they have Zach Bond. Andrew Van Ginkel, wish.com, Zach Bond. Yeah, I mean, well, and the Eagles are funny with that because they believe that, as you mentioned, the 30-year-old and concerned about the number of reps and wearing down because they knew they rode him pretty hard over the past 2 seasons and he produced for him. And that's just difficult reality of this sport. Saquon Barkley got rode pretty hard by the New York Giants in some bad circumstances with a bad offensive line and a bad quarterback and a bad everything on offense and bad turf on top of it. And they don't seem to care that he's got 1,500 touches under the hood. It's funny with this team when they point out one thing for one player and then say, this is different. Is it? Is it different? I don't know.
It's really not all that different. I mean, I was strongly against trading Haason Reddick, just given. I mean, look, this is someone that 27 sacks in 2 seasons. He's been a consistent giving you consistent production, been a locker room pillar. I mean, that's the going rate. He's not asking for anything out of the ordinary. He deserves to be compensated.
That we don't know. We won't know until he gets a deal done with the Jets. We don't know what his ask number was. My guess is you're going to be right, and it wasn't outrageous. Didn't say make me the highest paid pass rusher in the National Football League. My guess is the number was what you, me, John, and most people who follow the NFL would say would be fair, but we honestly don't know that. The Eagles know that, Josh Reddick and his team know that, and now the Jets know what the number is, but they haven't gotten a deal done yet, which tells me maybe he is asking. Hassan is asking for the moon, the sun, and the stars. What would that number be for you? What do you think the number would be that you say the Jets actually paid that it would be above and beyond, and you go, all right, now I understand why the Eagles had to move on.
24, 25 a year.
Yeah, I'm at 25. I think he asked for 25. And I wouldn't go 25. 20, 21, I think then you're starting to get in the range you should be. If the Eagles could have gotten 18, 19, I think they would have done it. Can't prove that, but I think that's, the razor thin margins. And people say, well, what's the difference if you're a Super Bowl contender?
No, and by the way, there's no guarantee the guys that he plays over 67.5% of the snaps.
I would expect
Jermaine Johnson. They have John Franklin Myers.
Yeah, they got a lot of depth. Yeah, a lot of depth. Very deep. None of their defensive line, even Quinnen Williams didn't hit that number last year, I believe. No, he just beat it. He was 68, I believe.
Yeah, he barely cleared it, to your point. Yeah,
but that's inside. Quinnen's inside.
Right.
He's inside.
None of their edge guys hit that number.
No, none of their edge guys. Jermaine Johnson was their top edge guy, and he was like 64-ish or somewhere.
Yeah, they're going to use a heavy rotation there, so there's no guarantee that he even comes close to that. And I think we'll be able to. I don't think the sack production will be an issue, but
no, not with that defense. Not with that defense.
And the other thing and I make this as an argument to keep Hassan, but it's just the way the National Football League goes. He never gets hurt. He plays every game. 17 games, 17 starts with the Philadelphia Eagles. Prior to that, with both Carolina and Arizona, he answers the bell. He's there every single game. You almost get the feeling that he's due for an injury. That you don't get to the National Football League for as many years.
100%
and not have. Yeah. Who is that? Zach Ertz, 100% injury.
Yeah, he's not the first one, but
there's a chance he's going to get hurt, which is going to mean there's no chance he's getting 67% of the reps.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't look at it like that, though.
No, you can't. You can't legislate injuries, so I can't worry about that part of it. But if Vic Fangio comes up to you, Andrew DiCecco, and say, you know what, I need my quarter flat defender. I need a guy who can drop in coverage when he needs to drop in coverage, and says, I want a different style of player. You say yes, or you say go F yourself, Vic. I'm keeping the proven pass rusher.
Well, I think he listened to him, because I would have to assume that was part of the agreement when he came over, and say, hey, look, I have to have some input here in personnel for me to be able to execute my defensive vision. This is what I need. Hassan's not as capable as somebody else who could do that, so he's not really going to be a fit. Now, this is just hypothetically speaking here, but I think that Vic's going to have a pretty significant say in personnel, or at least say, hey, these are the positions that I need you guys to make sure that you're honing in on. I have to have better play at safety, have to have better play at linebacker, and my edge rushers have to be a little bit more versatile and fluid in space. Here
would be my response to that question if I were Howie Roseman. I would say, hold on. Can I make a call to a buddy, Andrew Berry, general manager of the Cleveland Browns, and ask him if his defensive coordinator came in and said, you got to get somebody better than Myles Garrett coverage. Guys coming out of the backfield.
That wouldn't happen. They don't play that defense.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm talking hypothetically here. If the general manager said that, if Jim Schwartz said, listen, I need a defensive end that can cover, drop in a coverage every once in a while, I tell him, shut up and coach the best defensive end in the National Football League. Make the most out of him. I'm putting it on you to make adjustments, not the best defensive pass rusher in the
Well, that's the difference. Miles Garrett and Hassan Reddick, they're in different tiers.
With all due respect to Hassan Reddick, He ain't Myles Garrett.
Right.
Yeah, and Miles is different, as they say. But yeah, Jim Schwartz is a different type of defensive coordinator. I prefer that type of defensive coordinator, by the way Jim runs his defense, and defensive linemen love playing for Jim Schwartz, and understandably so. And Myles Garrett, defensive player of the year, by the way, this year. So, yeah, he's not dropping him in the coverage.
No.
Now that was one of the biggest overblown things about the Eagles defense last season was how much they dropped Hassan Reddick into coverage. And the problem is they didn't drop Hassan Reddick into coverage a lot. And yet people still lose their minds when they did it, Andrew. So if it's going to increase, and I think it's going to increase with whomever is playing that particular position, are people going to be upset again?
Probably. You know how it is around here, John. Everybody's going to be upset about something. Why not the defensive lineman dropping into coverage? But I don't think it'll be as significant with a player who's more adept at doing that and looks more natural doing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously Reddick has shown in his career, earlier in his career, that he really wasn't his forte. So when the whole Hassan Reddick thing was happening, and it was such a delay as far as why he wasn't being traded yet, I go back to, he's not a scheme fit for everybody. He's not a fit for everybody. It took forever for teams to figure out how to use him and deploy him properly. So it's going to take a certain team that's going to be able to accentuate his skill set, and the Jets are one of them.
I think he'll do just fine in the Jet system. And the whole, if Fangio is going to be dropping his defensive lineman in coverage thing, who's going to be the guy that you're going to use to take advantage of that? Because the whole philosophy behind it is you're expecting this guy to rush. Ooh, he drops back in pass coverage. So you're going to bring someone else, because you're not going to bring less. You're going to bring the same number, if not more guys, and actually make it a blitz. Who's going to be that guy? Who's that Eagle player at either the linebacker, cornerback, or safety position who's going to surprisingly come and get to the quarterback and rush and throw or make it a hurry or make it a hit or make it a sack, best case scenario? Who's that guy right now? If John is hinting at, well,
they're hoping it is.
When you drop a defensive lineman in coverage, you know that somebody's coming from somewhere else. Either corner, linebacker, or safety.
Gardner-Johnson, the Kobe Dean.
Devin White. That's all Devin can do, man. White. Go straight ahead.
Nakobe's good coming off the edge. At least he was in college. So, and Gardner-Johnson's that rangy, versatile DB. So those would be my two guys, and Devin White as well.
Yeah. By the way, Devin White, where are you guys right now on a scale of 0 to 100 percentage? Devin White going to be the starter, or are they going to do something else draft-wise? Post June 1st. Give me a number, both of you.
7.
98.
98?
Oh, yeah. You think the Eagles are going to get another linebacker to replace him?
I think
they're done.
I think they might take a linebacker in the second round. Now you can't take everything.
I think you might be right, John. Well, that's why I have it as a 7, not exactly a slam dunk. Right now, they've draft-proofed the roster so that they don't have to. They sort of guard against having to potentially reach for a player at a position of need. But, I mean, what they have now is an upgrade over last season, to be clear. But it's arguable if it's going to be good enough to be able to contend with some of the better teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I would say that's being generous to call it arguable. Yeah, that is still a glaring weakness in my eyes. But, Nakobe's a little bit different because he's got to stay healthy, and we got to see what you have in Nakobe Dean. But
and by the way, I had a great chat with Ben Van Sumeren a few weeks ago. Yeah. I'm excited to see if he's able to maybe carve out a rotational sub-package role and get that speed on the field, man. He's
there's another guy.
That the Eagles like him. They like him, and they invested in his development. I think he probably sticks as the final linebacker when it all is said and done.
I just took a quick look here because I didn't think it was much of a number, and it's not. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, 5 years in the league. Career sacks, quick guess, Andrew D. How many do you think he's got? 5 years in the league. How many sacks?
0.
No, he's got slightly more than that.
Well, based on the way you set it up, I was going to say, I don't know, 0.
He's got 4 sacks in 5 years. So if he's the guy, he's going to be the one that no one's going to see coming. He's going to be the blitzer from the safety position.
Could be.
Hasn't exactly been a forte of
I wouldn't be
why not him? Well, you know what I mean? Like, this is a new system, and he's a player that is rangy. Why it has to be somebody? Why not him?
Watching Vic's great defenses when he does, and I wouldn't be too worried about the blitz to begin with because he's not going to blitz a whole heck of a lot. But when he does send,
but we understand, just so we know what we're talking about here. If you're dropping a defensive lineman in coverage, you're not going to blitz less. You're not going to blitz 3. You're going to bring 4. So somebody's going to come from somewhere else. Who is that guy if not a defensive lineman? That's the question I'm asking.
Well, he generally does it. He generally does it when he's playing quarters coverage, and you're basically just playing a zone to be in as they say, the quarter flat defender. You're basically just playing the zone. It could be a 3-man rush. It could be a 4-man rush. It could be a blitz. When he does tend to blitz, it tends to be the slot. So, that's another position. And Avonte Maddox was pretty good at that he was in a small sample size. Yeah, I'm starting to think, look, if he's still out there, take a flyer, 1-year minimum deal, bring him back and hope he can stay healthy. He can hang out with Dallas Goedert for another year. Why not?
You and I love Maddox, man. A great guy to talk to. Somebody who I think in a limited capacity where you can kind of preserve his skill set and his body, he might be able to give you something, especially the longer he sits out there. It's starting to look like it would be a favorable deal for whoever brings him in.
Yeah. And part of the problem with Avonte, I think, is he's so small and he thinks he's, 6 foot 210, and he plays like that. He plays a very physical style of football and susceptible to injury. So
he's extremely tough. I don't like the misconception out there that he's
I can't stand it.
Yeah. It bothers me.
Yeah.
But he's got to be able to stay on the field. That's the whole thing. If you're playing him,
that's
minimum,
fair.
Then
but Andrew probably gets the same thing every time he gets hurt. Oh, he's made of glass. Shut up.
Yeah, they have no clue what they're talking about. He's as tough as there is. It's just some folks are a little bit more fortunate with injuries than others.
But I think if you're evaluating a player, you have to take it into consideration. How often is this guy hurt? If you're not, I think you're shirking your responsibility
you certainly
as a talent evaluator. I'll go with you two guys on. It's because he plays as hard as he does that gets injured as often as he does. But if you get hurt, you get hurt. Doesn't matter whether you're made of glass.
No, ability is availability.
Exactly.
A great football mind once said, or at least a great football mind in his own mind, we used to say.
I like Avonte Maddox as much as the next guy, but there's a reason why he's still sitting out there. If you don't think that reason is the 31 other teams in the NFL going, yeah, but the guy's always hurt, then you're just
they probably saw his medicals. Yeah, they're probably not good.
Yeah, they said we'll be in touch.
That's an issue. All right. Always a pleasure, Andrew D. Thank you very much for jumping in with us today. We'll definitely get you on again before the draft. Thanks for doing it.
At Andrew DiCecco, by the way, follow him on X, InsideTheBirds.com. Tremendous job on those pro days, Andrew. Nice job. Jeff Stout, Maryland, offensive line. I like it.
Check them out. Those they have some players there. 3 guys are going to be in camps. 2 of them will be drafted.
I got no problem with a Terp coming to Philadelphia. Andrew, good stuff. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
See you guys.
Andrew D. DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac coming back. We will put a bow on this show.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at Drytech. At Drytech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give Drytech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
J-Mac here with you with J-Mac on Birds 365. All right, I need a helping hand here, John. And I usually try not to end the show with an apology, but I'm going to owe one today. The Eagles head of conditioning, medical advantage, talked to Howie Roseman, whose name I always forget that you always bring up. It's got kind of a different first name.
Arsh Tenoda is their chief medical.
Spell that for me, by the way.
ARSH.
Arsh. And we speculatively have said Arsh has had a big hand in on decisions the Eagles have made as to how much to practice, when to come off the gas pedal, when to go down on it. And the announcement came out over the weekend that here's what the NFL offseason is going to look like with workouts, mini camps, and all that other stuff. And as of now, the Eagles are going to have a mandatory mini camp, something they have not done since Nick Sirianni took over as the head coach. You explained to our listeners in hour number one, COVID, big reason for year number two, and he negotiated guys to come in. So they backed off the mandatory aspect of the mini camp just to make sure guys showed up for other workout sessions. And it worked well. Last 2 years, we got to keep our players healthy. We're not going to go full bore because we worry about injuries and soft tissue injury there. And we thought that Arsh had a lot to do with it. How did Arsh lose this one? How did the Eagles?
Like I said, man, the pendulum swings in the NFL. If something works 1 year, you're golden, and if it doesn't work, they're probably
out of luck. Is that what you're telling me?
What's that?
Spit out of luck if it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
Through the fact that it worked the 2 years before that, it didn't work this last year, so we're gonna do the exact opposite.
It's a very, Even the Eagles are one of the more stable organizations in the NFL. And even they are very reactive when things don't go the way they had hoped, as you see with coaches and in the past with guys being scapegoated. It's just the public nature, man. You got to do something. And the old thing is that's the one thing I brought up Chip Kelly with best ability is availability. the most savvy thing Chip ever said is, don't tell me to do something because that's the way it's always been done.
Right.
I don't think you make change for change's sake, but the NFL does it all the time. The Eagles do it. Everybody does it all the time. Something doesn't work, right? Coordinators. Well, you only got to go back 1 year where hiring young coordinators worked in Philadelphia. But all of a sudden it didn't work. And they're like, oh my God, you can't have young coordinators. How could you have young coordinators? They forget what happened a year ago. And when it worked out really, really well, if you let them develop and all that kind of stuff for a little bit, now maybe it won't work. But that pendulum swings back, man. And now, and I've always said, and you've heard me say this, Jody, 100 times. I never believed it was a Nick Sirianni decision. I've never met the football coach that doesn't want to practice. I still haven't met him. And people forget. That's why I brought it up in his first season. It was COVID. He wanted to have a mini camp, but he had to, coerce guys to come in because of COVID. And that's why it went away. And then they stayed healthy and they're like, well, this is probably a good idea. And they start going down that road and you're SOL. Now you have a reason. We need to get these guys ready. We have new coordinators and now it's back.
Here's my bottom line point. For those when next year they go back to not practicing as much and not having mandatory don't kid yourself. The coach is not making this call. The coordinators are not making this call. Arch Denoda is not making this call. Howie Roseman is making this call. This is 95% Howie, and everybody gets to whisper in his ear to tell him what would be the best way to handle it. But at the end of the day,
it's definitely Howie's decision.
This is all Howie's call.
It's definitely his decision. He gets to make the decision. No question about that.
Because some people
who he listens to
Nick decided they're not. No. Nick is taking his word. Arch Denoda decided. No, Arch is just.
Oh, by no stretch did I mean to say Vic Fangio made this decision. I'm just saying it's easier for the coaches to express coming off a bad season what they want than coming off a good season. But when you go to the Super Bowl, you can't say, hey, we didn't have minicamp last year. We need minicamp. Howie's going to say, shut up. We stayed healthy, blah, blah, blah. Now you're coming off a season where you lost 6 of 7, whatever it was. You can say, oh, we need this. And Howie's like, all right. Yeah,
we need to change some things up. We're changing nothing up. We're going to come back here and do the same goddamn show tomorrow. Hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Hopefully it'll be somewhat different. Gee, somewhat different.
Well, then give us a quick John McMullen prediction. The Eagles will do what over the next 20 hours?
No, but we'll talk about different subjects. I got to talk about the UFL and the officiating and the technology and the chip and the ball, and they get spots right. I mean, my God, it's the first game in the history of the stupid league, and they're better at the NFL on so many things. It's embarrassing for the NFL.
The thing I liked most about it was they told the NFL, oh, yeah, you're going to take our old kickoff rule. We're going to go back to real kickoffs. We're going to make you run the length of the field and take risks and the like. I love the fact that the UFL.
I didn't even know that.
Oh, yeah, they ran back kickoff, kick the length of the field.
Yeah.
After the NFL adopted their kickoff rule, they go, yeah, our kickoff rule wasn't all that smart. You take it.
Well, that was the XFL.
We'll put real kickoffs back in the game.
The XFL had that kickoff. So, the UFL is a collaboration of the USFL and the XFL. The USFL didn't have the XFL kickoffs. So.
No. But the anyway. XFL kickoff, which has been adopted by the NFL, they're not going to have that in the UFL this year. Good on them. They're taking some stances. Yeah, we'll do a little UFL tomorrow. And we're going to do it in 22 hours. You in, McMullen?
Let's do it.
We will be back tomorrow right here on Birds 365 and 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.